Hello and a very warm welcome to this episode of The Entrepreneurial Edge. I'm Chris Bishop. Now, the next time you drive down the street and catch sight of an advertising board, take a good look. You may forget what it is advertising in a few minutes, but you must remember this is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Often people do not realize this as they drive by. Now, entrepreneur Brad Fisher does certainly realize that roadside advertising makes money because it's helped him make a fortune. He began from small beginnings in 1998 and now has 40,000 advertising boards and shareholders, including South African business mogul Cyril Ramaphosa. So welcome, Brad, to the program. Just a little about yourself, your background, your family. Was it a house of entrepreneurs?
Thanks, Chris. Just when you were introducing it, it's certainly not a billion rand business or anything, but it is an industry of probably of that size.
Okay.
My background is I went to school at a government school called Greenside High School in Johannesburg. Got a bursary with Goldfields to study at UCT, which I did. Business science degree, graduating in 1990, and then hit a bit of luck in the sense that Goldfields didn't require us to work our time back. They released a few of the bursaries. I think I was the worst bursar they had, so I was top of the list to be moved on, which gave me a bit of time and space to set up an entrepreneurial venture, which I had the good fortune of it working, setting up a market. A flea market.
And this is a very famous market. I mean, I think everyone across Africa who's ever visited South Africa went to Rosebank, to the, it was called the BB market, wasn't it?
Yeah, the B&B Rosebank market.
B&B Rosebank market. I mean, it was famous across the continent. But what gave you the idea for that, your first venture?
That's fairly interesting. I was trying to do a food stall at the waterfront in Cape Town, just before the waterfront had really got going. We were selling a product called Snackos. And the MD at the time, a hell of a good guy called David Jack, came past and said to me what was I doing, and I told him that I was studying and doing this on the side. And he said, well, why don't you rather write a report for me on markets, on craft markets, because I need to put a market here. So I got some experience through that. He actually gave me the job to set up the red shed and blue shed at the waterfront in Cape Town, which I did. I didn't own it or have a share in it or anything, but I learned some skills on how to do that. And then my current partner, still Brent Herbert, was doing a court case on markets in Johannesburg. He was doing his articles. He said, shouldn't we try and look at doing something in Joburg? And that's really where we got the idea from.
And how did it start out? I mean, because in my time of going to this market in Rosebank, it was fairly big. It was like, well, what should I say, massive, one of the biggest ones I've ever seen. But how small did you start?
Well, first of all, the problem we had is the reason why we got it in the first place was that the centre was shut. The whole of Rosebank was actually closed. We had to submit a traffic report as part of the lease requirements, and there was 5 cars the week before at 12 o'clock, the sort of peak time that it would eventually become. So it was closed. So the challenge was to sort of get the public there and the traders all at the same time. We launched with over 200 stalls. We rode on the Rosebank Mall brand at the time, the shopping centre brand, and we sort of said we there just to set up a market for the centre. And I had a bit of a track record from the waterfront in Cape Town, so I had some credibility, but we were young, we were 24, 25. We had our challenges, but yeah, we had a bit of luck and it worked out well.
But now, just to clarify as well, that market in Rosebank is actually no more at the moment. It's moved, you say? Yeah,
unfortunately, I've actually had the first serious legal dispute that I've ever had in 20 years, and they're redeveloping the centre, and one way or another we got turfed out. We're still busy with a damages claim on that, but we've relaunched the market in the centre called Norwood Mall.
And how did this market link to your present entrepreneurial success of street advertising?
We had no budget in the beginning to launch a business, and I think we literally had $3,000 left on my student loan. That's what we stuck in. So what we did is we used to cut cardboard boxes from the Pick and Pay at the mall and stick up just black and white or black and red at most newspaper type banner headlines on these boards, on the poles around Joburg, publicising the market. And I saw what an effective response we had from that. And it wasn't too legal at the time to actually do that, but others were doing it as well, and we jumped on the bandwagon. And then eventually formalized that into a project called Adopt-A-Lite, which I can get into, and that became our main business.
When was that moment when you thought, hang on a minute, these signs, they can make a lot of money? When did you think that?
After a few months, we started doing surveys of people visiting the market saying, how did you hear about the Rosebank market? Word of mouth, street polls, radio. We were doing a bit of radio advertising at the time, and print. We'd got into doing a bit of print as well. As we generated some income, we'd plowed it into more and more advertising. And out of 100 respondents, you'd get 80, 85 would say street poll ads, 17 radio, print would be less, and so it would go down. So for that particular thing, street poll ads was way the best. And I thought, well, there'll be other people other businesses that would also benefit from it.
And that was the next step. I mean, your company's called Adreach. How did you actually go to a company and say, or how do you go to a company and say, well, listen, I can get you on every road in Johannesburg or Cape Town or whatever? How difficult is it?
What happened was the polls started becoming a mess. We were doing the market flat out every week on the polls. Other companies like 702 and various brands started also putting up stuff. There was no regulation. And you'd eventually have 6 or 7 illegal boards up on a poll. And we sat with the council and said, look, let's try and formalize it. And we turned a negative into a positive. We came up with it. Actually wasn't my idea. It was an idea that came from the university to set up a thing called Adopt-A-Lite, where corporates like CNBC could adopt lights in Sandton, and the proceeds, or a big whack of the proceeds, in fact all of the proceeds in the beginning, would go up to putting up lights in Alexander. So you'd use roads that had the benefit of where the budgets went in the past, to giving advertisers the chance of getting branding but putting up lights in areas that didn't have lights.
What are the difficulties in your business? That's a question a lot of people ask when we get entrepreneurs on this show. What are the big difficulties in your business?
Yeah, our biggest difficulty is if you look at our business compared to, say, the real big guys like Continental or Prime Media Outdoor, they've probably got less sites than us, but one street poll ad can generate as low as 600 Rand, or our C-grade roads, it's even lower, 300-400 Rand. Whereas a billboard generates 10 to 20 grand. So we have to have 20, 30, 40, 50 street poll ads to generate the same revenue. The hassle with one street poll ad is the same. It's a unique record on the computer. It's got a piece of artwork. It's got a customer that still sees that thing, whether it's small or big. So your logistics is difficult. You've got 30,000 signs plus around the country, 40,000 if you include our associates.
And the competition, what's that like?
The competitions, what actually happened was we were fortunate because it was difficult. As soon as this thing started growing and the competitors would win areas like Midrand, they'd come to us after a few months and say, look, this is too much like hard work, and they'd let us run it on some sort of joint venture basis. So we have got competition, but to a degree, a lot of the competition work with us. We don't have the east side of Johannesburg, for example. But the guy that does that works with us because he needs access to the big brands. He needs access to our booking system. So we work with him on a joint venture basis. He sells to the local businesses, and we provide him with the national brand business.
And as we mentioned in the intro, your company has Black Empowerment, and you have Cyril Ramaphosa as a shareholder. How did you become involved with him in business?
Cyril got to hear about it through an investor that was trying to buy into the business at the time. And because the whole idea of it was business for the purposes of making a profit, driving social delivery, social uplift, and putting street lights up in townships, Adopt-A-Lite. Cyril loved that whole concept. And he was right, because if you got a business to be profitable at the same time was doing social delivery to be profitable, it was a great way of sustaining the delivery. And we went, so he was interested, he bought into the business. And we did other projects, if I can just go on a bit. Another interesting one was in Soweto. There were no street names up. This venture wasn't profitable, but it was quite a good one. So we actually put up poles on the ground with the name of the road, and then advertising above it that paid for the pole and the maintenance.
Okay.
So you suddenly had 5,000 street names that got delivered in Soweto, and in theory we would sell the advertising and make a profit. The difficulty there became the maintenance and the amount we could charge for the advert. So as a business venture, that was poor. But again, it was this idea of business being set up to make a profit and drive
And speaking of Soweto, you canoed for South Africa at the World Championships, but also you started a project in Soweto, teaching youngsters who couldn't even swim before how to canoe. How is that going?
That's probably the nicest part of my job. I could say it's using some of the entrepreneurial skills that I've hopefully picked up to drive an initiative like that. We've managed to get the whole thing, which I'll go into as a verified socioeconomic development initiative. We take kids literally off the street, teach them how to swim at a place called Power Park, which is those famous cooling towers, FNB towers at Power Park. And there's a pool there with a swimming coach that we work with, and we train these kids how to swim. Once they get a swimming proficiency certificate, we put them on the dam, we teach them how to canoe, and then onto the rivers, which they love. That's the whole magnet.
And you've had some amazing success stories.
Yeah, we've had some good stuff. We've had 2 kids that come from a shack, eventually winning the Doozy under 16, which Doozy Canoe Marathon's a difficult race, 3 days from Pietermaritzburg to Durban, same as the Comrades route. Running with your boat, paddling over rapids, difficult race.
And I take it you were there when that day they won.
There's actually quite an interesting, quite a nice story to it. The day they won, I was there, and the following year that they were junior, on the 3rd day they were coming second. We got out of our bus in the morning before the day, and I was talking to them. And Safisa, the one kid, said to me, he hasn't got his running shoes. So I said to him, Safisa, you're lying second, junior, and you're telling me you haven't got your running shoes, you must get your admin sorted. He said to me, well, Tom took it out of the bus, it's not his fault. Anyway, I was doing badly, and I said to him, Stafford, you can take my shoes, I'll paddle around. There was one major run on the day. You could either go round this thing called Burma Road or run over it. So I said, look, I'll paddle around, and I don't care, take my shoes. So, because I thought he'd have a good chance of doing well. Anyway, an hour later, I found him halfway up the Burma Road. My boat had broken. I had to go up in my shoes. Nowhere in the race either. His boat broken. I said to him, Safisa, I should tell you to give me my shoes back, because this is not why I took off my shoes for you guys to do so badly. But yeah, they won the Doozy under 16. We've got a kid, Siseko, who studying law today, also from a shack in Soweto, was 11th last year as a 19-year-old in the Doozy, 2,000 guys in the race. So it's pretty good going.
Okay, so Brad Fisher of Adreach, making a difference in people's lives on the water and by the road with your advertising billboards. Thank you very much for sharing your story with us. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for this week. That's a wrap for this edition of The Entrepreneurial Edge. From me, Chris Bishop, it's goodbye.